From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good Thursday morning. It's 4:30. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Victoria Hill. Thank you for starting your day with us.
And I'm at McIntosh. We've got wildfires. That's going to be the big story. Just devastating from yesterday. But we lose a lot of the wind for this afternoon. Good news to help out in that concern. And the skies started to clear out in the Billings area after the smoke moved across the region starting yesterday afternoon and evening. Right now at 56, a very light south breeze across the area. Still pretty dry conditions. Yesterday our high came in at 93, which was only 6 degrees below the record for the date. But the bigger stories we got into the afternoon was the top winds over 50 miles an hour at the Billings Airport. Some strong winds across the region. Temperatures this morning are starting off in the 40s and 50s, pretty close to where we were with a lot of the readings yesterday. But we have a much quieter weather picture in store for us once we start getting into the afternoon. In southern Montana and northern Wyoming, looking a lot of 40s and 50s this morning. Cooler at 36 in White Sulphur Springs, but mainly into the low 50s once we get from Billings towards Roundup, up towards Ingomar and Forsyth right now at 52. Also 52 for you in Belfry a couple of minutes ago. We got 44 reported at Reed Point, 42 in Livingston. Temperatures warming up into the mid 80s today. Plenty of sunshine, but we will have some of that smoky haze around. We'll talk more about that coming up in a little while.
This was the part of summer I was really hoping we were able to avoid and just skip over completely. But I was expecting it more so in August than, in September. So here we are, start of September, and things are getting serious. So.
Very serious in a very short period of time. There is some hope as we start getting into early next week, but for firefighters, that's a long way off right now.
Yes, it is. Every day counts. All right. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about for our top stories today, so I will get to it. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
Residents in Jordan, Montana are waking up in their homes this morning after a wildfire temporarily forced the evacuation of the entire town. The fire is raging northeast of the town and started around noon yesterday. The Garfield County Sheriff's Office was monitoring a landowner's burning project, but it quickly got out of control. Several outbuildings, garages, and vehicles have been burned, but no homes have been lost. Many different crews responded and are fighting the flames from the air as well as the ground. Smoke was causing visibility problems in the area and is even being blamed for a head-on collision on Highway 59. This morning at 8, fire crews will set up a staging area at the Garfield County Fairgrounds.
That fire headed east of town, so that would have been northeast of Jordan, and then it made kind of a half-moon circle shape around the town of Jordan, skirting the town, and then is now south. With these heavy winds, it's resulted in incredibly fast travel of this fire, and so that has been a huge safety factor for us. It is burning in grass and sage fuels, so pasture ground versus timber. We do not have timber in the area that the fire is burning.
Now we go to Musselshell County, where crews are working to contain another wildfire that led to evacuations on Bobcat Lane and several other area roads. Officials say those orders will be in effect until at least this afternoon. At last check, officials said flames had jumped Fattick Creek Road and were heading south toward the Signal Peak mine. Shelters are open in Roundup. Firefighters are also working to put out a fire off of High 5 Road in Millstone. In Bighorn County, homes and ranches could be threatened today as firefighters work to put out a wildfire on the Crow Reservation that's burning more than 10,000 acres. The Northern Cheyenne Tribe has an evacuation order from the reservation line east to Iron Bridge. The Sarpy fire reached Highway 212 2 miles east of Busby. Officials say it started around 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon south of the Westmoreland Upsalica coal mine. Yesterday, the fire burned 15 miles in just 7 hours. And in Rosebud County, authorities are evacuating the town of Ashland as the rice fire approaches the area. The Rosebud County Sheriff's Office is reporting flames at Snyder Creek, Ingomar, and Tongue River Road. In other news this morning, some high school sports fans in Yellowstone County are going to be allowed back in the building. Local administrators met with county health officials yesterday, and it was decided each school could now make their own calls on fans in the stands. Huntley Project and Billings Central both announced they are planning to allow spectators. Health officials are expected to announce more information on the change at 10:30 this morning in a press conference. We'll carry it live on Q2 and on our Facebook page. In campaign news, with just 2 months until Election Day 2020, Montana's closely watched U.S. Senate race is entering the home stretch. But as the COVID-19 pandemic has severely limited in-person campaigning and candidate rallies, much of the battle between Republican U.S. Senator Steve Daines and his Democratic challenger, Governor Steve Bullock, is being waged on the TV airwaves. Today, MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison takes a look at the facts behind the rhetoric and the latest flood of TV attacks.
Governor Bullock entered this race with relatively good approval ratings, and a big part of the Republican strategy is to go negative and take that down. Like this ad from Senator Daines' campaign.
Bullock supports government-controlled health care and a carbon tax. He supports sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants, and he supports Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's liberal gun control agenda. And he's ready to help them pass the largest tax hike in American history.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. But there's more from outside Republican groups, like this from the Senate Leadership Fund.
Bullock stacked his coronavirus relief task force with his own campaign donors, and many of them stand to benefit. News reports found just 13% of Montana's relief funding had actually reached small businesses and towns by late July.
And this one from the National Republican Senatorial Committee.
An ambitious governor who exploits Montana taxpayers, like the $14 million in state contracts paid to his brother's company, using state troopers as his personal security detail while abandoning his job to run for president. Bullock did find time to veto a bill that would have saved seniors $21 million on their Social Security benefits.
Let's start with that last ad. His brother's Butte-based engineering company did get those contracts, but that was long after Bullock's brother sold his financial interest in the company, although he still sits on the company board. The NRSC has provided no evidence that the contracts weren't properly awarded. State troopers did accompany Bullock on presidential campaign trips, as they do everywhere, under an agreement with the state Justice Department. Bullock agreed to pay the Highway Patrol's incidental expenses for out-of-state travel during his presidential campaign. And the $21 million? That was a tax cut bill that Bullock indicated he would veto, because he said the state couldn't afford it, and Republicans in the legislature passed it anyway. On coronavirus relief, about half of the 24 task force members appointed by Bullock to advise where the money should go have donated to his campaigns. And some of them own businesses that received relief grants, but they're a tiny fraction of the thousands of Montana businesses that have benefited. As for distribution of the money, nearly $300 million, or 25%, is now out the door, and hundreds of millions more have been allocated for schools, local governments, enhanced unemployment benefits, and other uses in the coming months. And finally, let's go through that raft of charges in the ad from Senator Daines' campaign. On health care, Bullock does support creating a public option, which would be a government-run health insurer to compete with private insurers, not exactly government-controlled health care. Bullock says he's never supported a carbon tax, although a climate solutions council he appointed may recommend one. Bullock also does not support sanctuary cities. He did veto a Republican-passed bill last year to ban sanctuary cities in Montana, saying it was unconstitutional and unnecessary because Montana has no sanctuary cities. On guns, Bullock does support universal background checks, including sales at gun shows, and a future ban on the sale of assault-style weapons. And finally, that largest tax hike in American history, that's presidential candidate Joe Biden's proposal to raise taxes on those earning more than $400,000 a year, a proposal that Bullock has not said he supports. With 2 months until Election Day, no doubt you'll be seeing more of these ads going after Bullock and his record. We'll keep reporting on where the candidates stand. And tomorrow, we take a look at a line of attack and support on Senator Daines' record on China. In Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Absentee and other mail ballots will be sent to Montana voters just 5 weeks from now. Well, the Trump campaign is suing the state of Montana because of the new all-mail ballot system. The suit asked a Helena district judge to block an August order from Governor Steve Bullock that allowed Montana counties to choose whether they would conduct the November 3rd election by mail. Since then, about 40 Montana counties have chosen all-mail ballots. The suit was filed along with the state Republican groups and alleges Montana does not have enough safeguards in place for the process. And the president's administration is now working to lift endangered species protections for gray wolves in the lower 48 states. This could be approved by the end of this year. Removing federal protection gives states the power to manage their own animal populations. According to the Fish and Wildlife Service, the wolf population did rebound over the last few decades, and there is now a population of more than 5,000. Activists worry the species will be at risk of slipping back toward extinction if the plan goes through. In national news this morning, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is responding to criticism that she violated San Francisco's coronavirus rules when she was caught on camera at a salon. Pelosi maintains the salon told her she could come inside and is calling the incident a setup. The owner of the salon shared the video with Fox News showing Speaker Pelosi inside not wearing a mask over her nose and mouth. The salon owner called it a slap in the face. Joe Biden is heading to Kenosha, Wisconsin today, just 2 days after the city got a visit from President Trump. But instead of focusing on a meeting with law enforcement, Biden plans to meet with the family of Jacob Blake. His shooting by police has been causing unrest in the city. However, protests lately have been more peaceful, with officials even lifting a curfew last night. Biden's visit marks exactly 2 months until the election. The Democrat presidential candidate also attacked President Trump for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Biden said Trump hasn't done enough to make schools safe. And as CBS's Laura Podesta tells us, a top White House coronavirus task force member is urging Americans to be cautious this Labor Day weekend.
Colorado College is switching to remote learning after multiple infections forced students to quarantine in their dorms.
The alternative was being here and experiencing quarantine after quarantine.
In Miami-Dade, Florida, some students and teachers couldn't get online due to cyber attacks.
Some of them came from outside of the country.
Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden blamed President Trump for the struggle schools are having.
No real plan for how to help parents feel secure for their children. He's offering nothing but failure and delusions.
In North Carolina, President Trump remained optimistic the battle against the virus is nearly over.
We're rounding the turn. Vaccines are happening. Therapeutics are happening.
CBS News obtained a letter from the CDC to the nation's governors asking that they make plans to distribute potentially hundreds of millions of vaccine doses. The letter sets a target date of November 1st, 2 days before the presidential election.
Please wear your mask.
With Labor Day weekend approaching, right now health officials are concerned that Americans will repeat the mistakes of Memorial Day, when large crowds led to spikes around the country.
When I say socially distance, it means at all times, including with family members that you may not have seen for a few weeks.
Dr. Deborah Burke says college students who've been in crowds without masks should think twice before going back home. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
Burke says backyard barbecues have been a major spreader of the virus. Now we go to Livingston, where 2 Park High School faculty members are in isolation after testing positive for COVID-19. Everyone who had close contact with the individuals have been notified and will receive testing. There will be no disruption to the rest of the students, faculty, and staff at any other schools in the district. Yesterday, 4 new COVID-related deaths were announced. 3 of those were in Rosebud County. The other was a Lewis and Clark County resident. That brings Montana's death toll to 110. The state also announced 196 new cases on Wednesday, with 72 in Yellowstone County alone. The Lewis and Clark County victim is also the first COVID-19 related death reported at the Montana State Hospital in Warm Springs. The first case at the hospital was reported on July 17th. Since then, 9 hospital employees and 8 patients have been infected. The state says the remaining 16 individuals have all recovered. And before we take a break, this weekend marks the anniversary of the end of World War II. Now, families whose relatives were victims of the Holocaust are rediscovering part of their history. As CBS's Chris Martinez tells us, it's all thanks to a new online database.
For most of his life, Steve Solomon struggled to find the answer to a painful question.
Who were my family that perished in the Holocaust? What were their names? Where did they live?
After searching the website Ancestry.com, he finally found what he was looking for. The online genealogy company recently digitized and added tens of millions of Holocaust records to its database as part of the Arlson Archives collection. There, Steve found the names of relatives who were victims of the Holocaust and even discovered the first photograph of his great-grandfather he'd ever seen.
It was a registration card that my great-grandfather, Aaron Schwell, had to fill out by order of the authorities in Krakow, Poland, because he was Jewish. And he had to identify his name and other information, his occupation, who lived with him. And there was a photo of him on this document.
Steve's discovery comes at a time when historians say preserving the memory of Holocaust victims is more important than ever. 75 years after the end of World War II, many survivors of the Holocaust have passed away, and as their numbers diminish, historians say continuing to document their experiences is vital.
These are real things that happen to real people, and we need to make sure that we're paying attention so that we don't repeat those horrific events.
For Steve, finding the missing parts of his family's past allowed him to track down and visit his great-grandmother's grave.
Her great-grandson is an American citizen, is standing over her grave and remembering her. Something that, of course, no one had done in how many decades. It was pretty profound.
A family and their history finally made whole. Chris Martinez, CBS News, Los Angeles.
The Holocaust records on Ancestry.com are free to search. The website will also publish nearly 50,000 Holocaust survivor testimonies.